Okay. Am I audible over here? Over the web? Okay. So there was one question. Can you explain me the purpose of configuration management? That is property. Idempotency is a property, but there was a question on what is the purpose of it. Okay. So I want to deploy a website. Let us assume this is a scenario. Can I deploy directly on a Linux or a Windows machine directly? I take my code and deploy it over there. Will it work? Work అవుతుందా? అవదు. I need a mobile services. Will it be directly deployable on an operating system? No. Every application will have some of the needs for it to be executed. The needs are very simple. If you take simple application, for example, I want to run the Java application. What is the basic need? Java should be installed, right? Similarly, if I want to make an application or I want to deploy a website, I need some infrastructural needs for that application to be working, right? So configuring those needs is called as configuration management, right? Making or doing whatever is required so that your application is executed is configuration management, right? For that we do many things. It depends on your application. If it is Python, the stack what you do might be different. If it is Java based, needs are different. .NET based, needs are different. So how do you make basically a bare metal, what I would call a basic OS installation into a web server, into something where your application works? Those steps, okay, doing those steps is configuration management. For that we use configuration management tools where we get something called as idempotency. That's the whole point, right? Okay. So today we discussed that we will be starting on PowerShell, right? So let us see the environment. What is that we require for basically getting this PowerShell up and running, right? Okay. So for running PowerShell, any Windows machine after Win 7, Windows 7 or anything after that should be fine, right? So for the basics, whatever we start, but eventually we will end up at the need of Windows 10 and Windows Server 2016. But when we start, you don't need all of that, all right? So we'll be starting in any Windows environment which you have. So in all the environments, PowerShell is already installed. There is no need for you to install anything, right? Okay. So if you have Mac or Linux based systems, if you have Mac or Linux based system, create a Windows virtual machine or create a cloud machine which has Windows in it. Okay. So I would want to start it with Windows. Okay. In Linux also you can install PowerShell, but that is not full-fledged PowerShell what you see on Windows. Only limited support is there. So since this is more towards Windows, I would recommend to have a Windows machine over here. Fine, makes sense, right? So now the other requirement is we will be doing only one extra installation, which is Visual Studio Code. It is not the Visual Studio which your developers use. It is a Visual Studio Code, which is a text editor, which is a very simple text editor which you can use, right? Or you can use something called as PowerShell ISC. Anything is fine. Anything is fine. PowerShell ISC, there is no need for you to install. It is already there on your system. Visual Studio Code is some editor which we are going to use throughout our DevOps stuff. So I'd recommend basically that stuff, right? So these are our needs basically to start with. Now let us see how can I install Visual Studio Code. How can I install Visual Studio Code? What is in there? Go to the Google, search for Visual Studio Code, you will get the Visual Studio Code, download it. But yeah, I want the command line way. I want the command line way. So for that, we'll be installing something called as Chocolate. This is the most easiest way to install Windows applications. For example, you want Git to be installed. You want anything to be done on the Windows. Okay, if it is there in the Chocolate, it makes your life much simpler. Right? So first, let us see how do I install that Chocolatey so that I'll get all of my software needs on my system. Right? And then let us get started with our PowerShell and what are the different things which we need to know about PowerShell. Right? Okay. So Chocolatey, you will just say install Chocolate. This is something which I do almost very often because it's a very much useful tool. All right, go over here, scroll down, you would be seeing something called as install with cmd.exe. Just click on this, it will copy the command to your text. And remember, the command prompt you need to launch as an administrator, otherwise this will not work. Otherwise this will not work. So what you need to do is Windows R cmd. If you do this, are you seeing an administrator over here? No. So that's why what you do is just type for cmd, you will get this. Right click over here and just say run as administrator. Making sense? Then paste your command, click enter. It will take some time and Chocolatey will be installed on your machine. Remember, you have to run it as an administrator. If you don't run it as an administrator, the script will fail. Inte. Once you have this, installing softwares become simpler. Once you have this, installing softwares become really simpler. So I have Chocolatey already on my machine. Let me show you a small demo of how it works. Okay. So I want any software. Let us assume that I want VLC media player. All right. So Choco. Yeah, just type this Choco VLC. Scroll down, you'll be seeing a command called as Choco install VLC. That's it. You don't need to go to the net. You don't need to download anything. You don't need to click on the license agreement. Choco will take care of all of that. To execute this, okay, click over here. Are you seeing PowerShell over here? If you don't see directly, type power. Right click on this and run as administrator, because whenever you are installing softwares, it is better that you are at administrator. But if you are not, it's okay. Now I would just say Choco install VLC. That's it. Now downloading the software, getting it installed, all of that is Chocolatey's responsibility. All right. I want to uninstall it. So Choco uninstall VLC. So what do you think is a better way? Using this or searching in the internet, downloading, double clicking and clicking next button till it says finished? It's your choice. Both are right. There is nothing called as wrong in that. But this is, for me, is a better way because I can just type one command, sit back and relax, and it will do the job for me. Right? So installing and uninstalling of anything is simpler over here. So similarly, you want Visual Studio Code, right? That is what I said. Now what is that you will search for? Choco Visual Studio Code. So let me click on something. Okay, this is enough. If you go through the right search, that is enough. Just click this. You will have Visual Studio Code on your system. Remember, this is only for Windows systems. This is not there in Mac. This is not there in Linux, because you don't require. There are already package managers there. For example, in Ubuntu we have apt, right? Aptitude. In Red Hat you have yum, right? Similarly, in the Mac systems you have brew. Ivanni already akkada unnai. So Choco is nothing but the replication of the same thing, right? Fine. Can I use it in Office? Absolutely you can. but there is an enterprise edition to it. If your company want to manage all of the installations via Chocolatey, they can go with enterprise editions. But if you want to install any software, I am using it in my office, right? But in some companies, they might not allow it. You might not have admin privileges on the systems which you work. There, it might not be possible. But if you have an admin privilege on your system, you can go ahead and install. But remember, Chocolatey is free, but the softwares which you install using Chocolatey might not be free. So for example, there might be some of the packages over here which your company is not supposed to use. That you should be careful about, right? So for that reason, there is something called as enterprise Chocolatey. Your company can buy a Chocolatey account where they will put a list of all the necessary softwares for your working environment, and you can only do that. Okay. But for our practice, just use it whenever you want to configure Windows machine. Tomorrow, let us assume that I want to install Packer. I will not be going to the Packer website and then basically finding out what is the version of the Packer, download it, install it, nothing. I'll just go to the web. I'll say Choco Packer. I'll get a command like Choco install Packer, done. So my installation is automated at least. All right. Make sense? All right. So this is something which I want you guys to start using. This is a better way of managing your installations. All right. Good. So only that command will get you the stuff ready. Yesterday in the cloud class, I have also spoken about Git for Windows. Now you download Git for Windows, but tomorrow I am going to tell you a better way was my statement. All right. Better way is this. So for example, you want to install Git. Choco Git for Windows. So what is the statement? Choco install Git. Just use that. You will get the Git bash on your system. That's it. You want AWS CLI. Choco search AWS CLI. Azure CLI. You can get it from here. So this is a package manager. What is it? Package manager. What will it will help us in? It will help us in installing softwares from command line. Right? Tomorrow in your company, let us say that you have to give a developer a machine. Right? You are an administrator and you have a software stack to be configured. So for me, downloading and installing everything might take a hell lot of time. But if I have this, all of these Choco commands, I can put it in a script file and then I can execute, and that machine will be doing its job parallelly and I can work on something else. This is what we look out for, right? So this can be used in your day-to-day administrative activities also. Fine. Good. Let us fall back to PowerShell then. All right. In Windows, traditionally we have DOS prompt, or what we call it as command prompt, right? Which was okay. It was good. It was doing its, with all due respect to the command prompt, a disk operating system, it has its own way of looking at it. But with the new age, there has not been much in DOS prompt. We cannot compare DOS with shell. Linux shell is much stronger. You will have many things which you can do on a shell script or a bash terminal. But on a DOS prompt, no. There is not much of capability there. So, but scripting is something which is very much required for administrators, because every time if you do the activity via UI, the most problematic area out of it is you cannot automate it. You cannot automate it. Let me tell you a simple scenario. You have been given 1000 Windows servers, which are present in at approximately 50 locations of your company. Each location 20 Windows servers, right? And you are part of an administrative team, and you are supposed to configure IAS server on that, right? And how do you do that? You will take 20 engineers. You will take 20 engineers, and on 20 engineers, you will tell a document, or you will basically publish a document saying that please execute this in order, right? Can you guarantee that all the 20 engineers have done the same steps? No. Then how to solve that? Write a script. But the problem is DOS prompt was not that capable to write a script. So to control that, people used to go back to Windows SDK, Win SDK, where people used to write code either in C++ or C#, which becomes more complicated for admins, right? You cannot, it is not easy for us to really learn a language and then, especially not C++. Various languages are all fine, but not C++, definitely not C++. but Windows SDK is in C++. Okay, C++ is the most complicated language possible, right? You have to create the allocations, you have to remove on your own, memory leaks, a lot of problems. So as an administrator, you are not expected to do all of that. So to do this, Microsoft had to write lot of suits, Microsoft management suite, Microsoft operations suite, right? Many other things. So they wanted to come out of this. This was not happening on Linux, because in Linux everything is shell based. For everything there is a CLI, and their admins are doing their job wonderfully. But here we search for a lot of tools. That's the whole idea when the thought process of PowerShell came into play. Okay, PowerShell, they wanted to design it much stronger than shell prompt. And if you know PowerShell correctly, it is already stronger than shell scripting. It is stronger than shell scripting, right? So how can I make that such a blunt statement? I think it will take some time for me to prove when you start doing some activities, right? Because underneath PowerShell, there is .NET which does all the job. Underneath PowerShell, it is all .NET. You and we don't need .NET to run on this, but whenever you type any command, for example, you do this. You do this, right? So basically what is happening underneath is it is basically using .NET framework to get the job done. Make sense, right? And it is very easy for you to create your own functions, right? Or your own something called as commandlets, right? In PowerShell, we come across two important categories, which are commandlets and functions. Commandlets and functions. Okay. So commandlet and function, the small difference is commandlet is an implementation which has been done completely in .NET or C#, whatever you call it. A function is a wrapper around it, which you and me might have written for simplicity. Okay, function necessarily might not be in .NET. It could be written in PowerShell itself. So in a PowerShell at a core, we have two important things. One is commandlet. The other one is function. Commandlet is completely written in .NET, C#. Function, it might or might not be, right? Functions are very simple stuff, but they both look the same. They both work the same, right? But the difference is in the implementation. So you and me need not worry whether it is a commandlet or a function, because both will do the same job for us. Both will do the same job for us. So whenever we are working on basically PowerShell, we need to understand certain terminology, how PowerShell basically presents itself. One important thing what PowerShell always does is, okay, let me, anyway, I have this, right? So in PowerShell, we have commandlets. What are commandlets? I should have used the commandlets. Commandlets are commands which you can execute in PowerShell. Okay, fine. Functions are also the same thing, but the difference is they are implemented in C#. Okay, now let me define functions. Are commands, same thing, which you can execute in PowerShell. Okay, the only difference being not necessarily implemented in C#. You can create functions using PowerShell itself. There is no need for you to know C#, right? Making sense, right? Both are same for us. And whenever we write commandlet, there is a strict convention which Microsoft follows, and which it would expect you and me to follow. The convention is verb hyphen noun. Every commandlet will look like this: verb hyphen noun. Okay, do something, that is a verb. On something is noun. Okay, so let me demonstrate this. Get hyphen help. So what is this? Get is a verb, and you are basically asking a noun which is help. So get me the help. Tomorrow you go to something, you might find something like get service. Right? You will have this convention. You will have verb hyphen noun convention, and there are many verbs, and there are many verbs. So let me execute one simple command which will basically help us in understanding what are the verbs that are present on my system. Get verb, a whole list. All right, it is very difficult for me to basically show all of this in a screen. Okay, even though I have not demonstrated what a pipe is, but I am taking a convenience. Okay, I'll just use something called as pipe more, but I'll explain you what that is later. All right, so you have, sorry, you have verbs like add, clear, close. These are all verbs. All right, so on your system you have the following verbs, right? And then you might have many nouns around it, many nouns around it. Fine. So for example, you might have something like wait process, wait for something to be happening on the process. So that's the convention. So once you understand this, commands will basically look very simple, right? So let me do this. I'm executing one more command. I've just executed two commands till now. One was get help, the other one was get verb, and now I'm executing one more stuff, which is get command. This is a whole list of commands which you have on your system. Whole list of commands which you have on your system. Now, since it is going for more than a page, I'll be using the same convention what I used in the last stuff, which is get command, right? Sorry, saying there is something called as function over here. Yeah, it is fine. What is the difference between function and commandlet? For you and me, while usage, there is no difference. But technically, the difference is function might not be necessarily written in .NET or C sharp, whatever it is, right? So if you scroll down, you'll be seeing loads and loads of functions, right? Functions, commandlets. This is a whole list what you get from. Okay, and you can use any one of them. You can use any one of them for your needs. This is the first thing which you need to understand. Is this clear? Verb hyphen noun, and for every command you will have certain stuff. So let me assume that I am interested in a command which is service, which is service. So I'll just say get command star service. So the following commands: get service, new service, all right, restart service. I'm interested in commandlets. I'm not going into function. All right. So resume service, set service. These are all the commands. All right. Similarly, for anything, if you want to do, for example, you want to manage. Let us assume that what is it you want to manage? You want to manage files, yeah, or objects, whatever it is. So get command, just use star and type whatever you want. I would type something called as DNS and star. Something to manage DNS services. What is that I would have in PowerShell? I don't have much. In Windows Server you will have them, because this is a desktop version. You don't have DNS servers over here. Similarly, if you want to manage an Active Directory, so you'll be using AD. So get command star AD star. Okay, add also came into play. But on a Linux, on a desktop machine, we will not see much of the stuff. But if I had executed the same command on Windows Server, I'll get some more commandlets, because on desktop version you might have less, and on servers you might have more commandlets, right? So if you know the basic stuff what you are trying to do, you can find out the command very easily by using this. Yes or no? Yes. Okay. Now this is all good. Okay. So we know how to get the help, but one important thing once you get into the stuff is you need to know what is your version of the PowerShell. What is the PowerShell version? So for that you will be using $ps version table. All right, and it will tell you the version. It will take time. It's okay. It should not take this much time also, man. Come on. Yeah. So we have PowerShell version. What is the version of PowerShell now? PS version is for you on your system. When you have Windows 7, it might not be 4.0. It might be 2.0. It might be 2.0. All right. But if you want this, you can use Chocolatey for this. Choco PowerShell. Just search for that, and he would give you version 4, and then you have to do Choco install whatever it is to get the PowerShell version 4. That's the most easiest way to do the things, right? Because any installation, I want you to use Chocolatey. It makes your life simple, right? So this is fine. We'll be moving away eventually from Windows 7, so it's okay. Are we good? Yeah. So if I know what I want to do, basically any idea on what is that I'm trying to do, it is very simple, because I can basically say get command. I can write some expression around it, and I will be getting out whatever is the stuff which I am required. So for example, your configuration management says this: before you install the application, stop the IIS service. What is it saying? Stop the IIS service. After that, copy the folder into some path, whatever it is, some directory, and then restart the service. Let us assume this is what you are asked to be done. So now, basically, in Windows, there are many services that are running. Yes or no? Yes. Right? How many of you don't know anything about service? What is a service? అందరికీ తెలుసా సర్వీస్ అంటే ఏంటో? Can I conveniently make an assumption that everyone is aware of services? Right? Okay. So let me tell you what is the difference between service and an application. Whenever you launch Windows, right, you launch Chrome. That is an application which you have launched. The process of it will be created on a based of user action, and when you close it, application is closed, killed. But there are certain stuffs or certain applications in your system which you want to be running always, and you want to always run them in the background. You don't want to see them, but you want to run them in the background. This is something which we call as service. This is something which we call as service. So for example, you do control P, right? Everyone does that, right? So you can do control P from any application, and it will basically show you the printer dialog, and from that you can just say print, and it would be printed, right? By the way, that is a background service. That is a service. So you'll have whole set of services, once for many different purposes. And if you want to see the service, you can use get service command, but I'm not going to do that. But I'm going to show you how we see normally. Go to Windows R, okay, and type services.ms. This is the whole set of services, and in this, whatever you are seeing has started, right, are the services which are running in the background. Now let me come back to this. Are you seeing this print spooler? Yeah. Stop this service and do control P. It will not work, because this is a service which is listening for print activities, and then it will forward the request to whatever printer which you have set. If you stop this service on your laptop, printing will not work. All right. So similarly, for different purposes, we have different services. And as a configuration management, sometimes we need to manage this. For example, you would see, I'm not having IAS over here, but even for IAS, we'll have some sort of services over here. IAS is not installed on this machine, but whatever it is, right? Are you getting the whole point now? So based out of your activity, you might need to work on different areas of Windows. So this is a service, and service is something which we work a lot. And the same thing which we in Linux world, what is that we call it as? The Windows lo service and now, or Windows service and now, right? We are calling this as Windows service. What is the same thing in Linux? We will call it as daemon, a service which is running in the background. Yeah, we still use start service and all of that, but the actual terminology which we use in Linux is daemon. Okay, Linux daemon is equal to Windows service. That's it. Both have the same property, right? Okay, good. So shall we start doing something over here? All right. So one thing is you can write your commands over here, explore the stuff over here and all of that. But Microsoft has given you a special editor where you can learn PowerShell. Special editor where you can learn PowerShell. That editor is, are you seeing something called as ISC over here? Run as administrator. This is an editor where you can run PowerShell itself, but it would also help you to help in writing PowerShell scripts, right? Okay, so you will have a PowerShell terminal, you will have some file which you can create, right? And apart from that, you will have every command over here. For example, you want to use a command which is get service, get service. Click on it. It would also give you UI. Traditional Microsoft's way of simplifying the stuff, right? But I don't want this to be used. Don't use this UI options, no, right? Because eventually we will also have to be working on Windows, on Linux, and in Linux, if you expect the same options, you will never get it, right? You can use this. There is nothing wrong. And for example, you can just say that here you can enter computer name. Let me enter something. So something like Dell, right? So what is the name of the service which you are looking out for? Just now we have seen something called as print spooler. Click on, are you seeing here the command has been formed? Okay, but I don't want this to be done. I don't want this to be done because this is okay. Yeah, this it is good. It is good for whatever it is. Manaki రానప్పుడు we can go here. Okay, I will not use this editor for this, but I'll use this editor for this. So let us assume that I write this get service, right? Or let me call it as get alias. Don't worry, whatever I'm trying to write. Okay, so let us assume this is some sort of a script, right? You would actually have a more complicated scripts than this, right? And you want to run them, and whenever you run them, how will you debug them? How will you find out what is going right or what is going wrong? Generally in the Linux class we will write lot of echo statements, right? While developing in Linux scripts we will write lot of echo statements and we will find out what is happening, right? Now let us assume that I would use this echo, all right, whatever it is, whatever stuff it is. I've written some 3 lines. Now I want to understand what happens in every line. So what will I do? I will try to print every statement. That is a traditional Linux way of developing scripts. But see what I do here. Okay. Are you seeing debug over here? Yes. Okay. So let me save this file. I'm okay. I'll call it as don't know.ps1 because till now we don't know what we have written. All right. Fine. And now I want to find it out. What I'll do is I'll just put a breakpoint. Okay, and are you seeing something like play button over here? Yes, and then after this, right? I'll just say, are you seeing there is something, the screen execution has stopped at that point, suddenly it has turned into different color, right? And now see what I can do. Okay, there are step over, step into, and step out. If you are a developer, you know what this is, because we do this very often, debugging, right? Fine. Now I do F10. I highlight on $test. Are you seeing all the output? So there is no need for you to put echo statements. You can debug the script because it has a strong programming background at this stuff. So even if you see the new script in PowerShell which you don't understand, take a machine, start debugging. Okay. So let us see F10. If you see in the prompt over here, it is just doing the job, right? And after that we have said echo hello, done. Okay, your script execution, you can control it. You can control it. You can see what are the steps that are happening, and every step you can debug it, which is not possible in shell scripting. Not this అంటే possible అవదా debugging అంటే yeah, it is possible, but not like this. But not like this. You have to make lot of assumptions. You have to put lot of variables. You have to see them, monitor them. Here it is not that difficult. It is very simplified. All right. So let me do one thing. File, open, and there is something called as this one. Some PowerShell script. We don't know what it is. Right? What I can do? I can put a breakpoint. Debug, toggle breakpoint. I'll get it. Run. I get the breakpoint. And from there on, you can use some keys. So this is a very important activity which you are supposed to. Very, very important. Are you seeing this? Every execution it is showing you line by line. So as a PowerShell script, as a person who does PowerShell scripting, you should know how to do this. How to do this. And by the way, this we call it as debugging. For the people who don't know about it, this we call it as debugging. We can get into every line of execution of PowerShell and basically see what is happening. At any moment, you can basically click on the variable and know what is its current value. What is its current value? Make sense? Right? Looking good? How many of Linux administrators in the room or Linux shells people who know shell scripting? ఒక్కలే ఉన్నారు క్లాస్లో, మిగతా ఎవరికి ఏమి రాదా? లినక్స్ షెల్ స్క్రిప్టింగ్ క్లాస్లో ముగ్గురికి వచ్చు. ఈజ్ మై అజంప్షన్ రైట్? నలుగురు. మరి మిగతా వాళ్ళందరూ ఏం చేస్తున్నారండి? ఐఎమ్ నాట్ స్పీకింగ్ ఆఫ్ ద పీపుల్ హూ హావ్ జాయిన్ టుడే ఆర్ ఎస్టర్డే. ఐఎమ్ స్పీకింగ్ అబౌట్ ద పీపుల్ హూ హావ్ జాయిన్ బిఫోర్ దన్ దట్. డోంట్ యూ నో షెల్ స్క్రిప్టింగ్? నో? వండర్ఫుల్. ఎప్పటికి వస్తుంది? వచ్చే పుష్కరాల కల్లా వచ్చేస్తుందా? Because I think in the last 1 month or last 2 months, there are 2 times when I have seen shell scripting classes happening, and I know people who are older than that. మరి ఇంకా షెల్ స్క్రిప్టింగ్ నేర్చుకోకుండా ఏం చేస్తున్నారు మరి మీరు? దట్స్ యువర్ చాయిస్. ఫైన్, వాట్ ఎవర్ ఇట్ ఇస్, రైట్? సో క్యాన్ వీ డూ దిస్ ఇన్ షెల్ స్క్రిప్టింగ్? Debug like this? Is it possible? No. That's the best part. That's what we are trying to do. So in PowerShell, we have better tools, better way to debug, all right? And it takes all the good practices from shell scripting also. It takes all the good practices from shell scripting also, but Windows tries to give you a tooling where it is more convenient for you to develop complicated scripts or understand complicated scripts. That's the whole point. Are we good? Yes. And one more strength of PowerShell is you can basically use C# whenever you don't think PowerShell is going to happen. Scripting is not going to help you. You can get a developer and ask him to develop a commandlet where it is pure coding. So that's something which is not possible in PowerShell, right? Because in PowerShell everything is operating system kernel interactions. You don't have that. Here we have this flexibility. All right? Are we good? Yeah. So we should be accustomed, or we should be very helpful to basically use this over here. All right? Okay, so you can use debugging from here, or you can use debugging from Visual Studio Code, whatever it is. You can debug at both the places. All right, but initially let us use this PowerShell's inbuilt tool, and later on let us move to Visual Studio Code. Fine. Till this moment, do we have any questions? Uh, how can we change path if we are installing? Okay, first thing is you are installing from Chocolatey because you don't want to manage all of that. నేను చాక్లెట్ నుండి ఎందుకు ఇన్స్టాల్ చేస్తున్నాను? I want to install from Chocolatey because I don't want to know where the software is installed. I want to manage my software with very simple commands like install software name, uninstall software name. Right? You cannot change paths. You cannot. Right? Can we ensure installation is done on the drive other than? No, it is not configuration. You don't do that. Here the whole point is, do you want the software on your system? If your answer is yes, go for Chocolatey. If you are very specific about basically locations where it should be installed, then go with the manual way. Download it, double click it, change the paths, continue your installations. Right? Okay, how can we come to know which version is installing? Right, so generally whenever you basically go to that Chocolatey page and scroll down, it will tell you what is the version which it is using. So that should not be a very uh, okay, fine. Can I keep my resume in Naukri without configuration management tool like Chef and Ansible? You can, because the Naukri will not ask whether you know configuration management or not, right? All right, yeah, but will you get number of calls? You might, if you have Docker. If you don't have Docker and Jenkins, calls might be drastically reduced. But DevOps position without a configuration management is not a reality. Is not a reality. So number of calls might be less compared to what others are getting. Okay, fine. So Venkat has said that basically the voice is not doing good. Is it if it is the same problem with others? Please do write it. Next stuff is it secure? What is secure? Can you just tell me? Is it PowerShell? Are you asking me whether it is secure or not? If PowerShell, yes, it is. Right? PowerShell has nothing to do against security. Right? Chocolatey. Chocolatey, is it secure? The open source, the open one might not be, but if your company takes the enterprise one, it is. It is. So it depends on which version you use. All right. Okay. Wonderful. Good. Now, before getting into the rest of the aspects, I'll show you one important thing. Okay, whenever you start working on PowerShell, I'm going back to my PowerShell window, so please do this as a first activity. You can use tab. There is no need for you to type the complete command. Use tab, it will start helping you, but this might not be very helpful stuff. But type something for so that it can guess correctly. So use update, then you will get that. But I want update. Do this. Whenever you start PowerShell, please do this, because this what it does is it would give you a introduction of how to basically use the help. So after that you can say get help and tell whatever command which you want to run. So I want to run a command which is get. So now you get the help, but the problem is it has gone more than a page. Obviously, what will we do? Same command, pipe more. So then if you see, it is trying to tell that, okay, get service, gets the services of the local machine. Those are all the different arguments, and these are all the related links, right? And then if you are just interested in examples, you can also try this. Get help, get service hyphen examples. Okay, you want to just understand how it is used. You're not really interested in understanding what are the different parameters which they have. So what I can do is I can copy all of this. Okay, and then basically say, oh man, get help, get service. Sorry, I've been working on Linux a lot. Yeah, so since it is more than a page, and Microsoft gives you all the possible explanation of with multiple examples. See, it gives you one example where he says get service, this command will retrieve all the services. Go to the second one, this command will retrieve all the service names which begin with WMI. So he will give you many examples, starts from a very simple example and he gets on to the most complicated scenarios possible. Making sense? So help of this is quite extensive, and if you use it correctly, it is not a very great deal to really write a PowerShell. All right, fine. So we have to write scripting. If it is command line usage, we can do via get help and all of that. All right, but if we are using scripting, we need to also worry about certain areas like variables, iterations, all of that, right? Okay, so that is a point where we fall into trouble. We fall into trouble. So for writing that scripts effectively, what do you think is required? You have to write a script, not use a command. If it is a command, you will use get help and you would try to get a command, or you will Google for a command, you will come to know the command, and then you will say get help, whatever command you found, hyphen examples. So you'll get the usage pattern. That's fine. But now what I want you to do is I want you to write a script. Write a script so that you can, I will be using that script. So to execute. So let us assume that script is to disable some service, okay, install some application and create a new service or something like that, whatever it is. So how to think about this kind of stuff? What do you think is the first thing which you need to know while writing script? You write, you will, we all know why we write scripts, right? Scripts ఎందుకు రాస్తాం అన్న విషయంలో ఏమైనా డౌట్ ఉందా? Right, scripts we write to achieve some aspect. Let it be like installation of software, copying the folders, whatever is required for your application. Now what is required for you to write the effective script? First step, you should know the steps first. అసలు మాన్యువల్గా ఏం చేస్తామో తెలియాలి, right? Because it is not possible for you to write the script with if you don't know what you want to do, right? I said I want to configure IAS server, okay. So for you, you should understand, if I want to configure or deploy a .NET application, probably I might need to stop the service or whatever steps it takes. First important aspect whenever you're writing a script is know the manual steps, okay. I will say, if you don't know this, you cannot write script, no matter however good you are in PowerShell. That is the first step. అసలు మీరు ఎందుకు చేస్తున్నారు, ఏం చేస్తున్నారు, know that religiously. You should know manually how to execute it, right? And this principle will be applied throughout configuration management, whether we are doing from PowerShell, shell script, Ansible, Chef. If you don't know manually how to do it, nothing doing, you cannot work on this. All right, next, since we have a scripting stuff, we will have some of the important aspects. So for that we will be applying, for example, I want the script to be executed, right? And whenever it is executed, whether it is for the first time or the second time, I want to make my script idempotent. So you should think of, once you know what are the steps, you are clear about your steps. So then the next thing is other possible scenarios. They're common sense. Technical game matter. I'm speaking very common kind of stuff. So first you know the manual steps and you know what are the other possible scenarios which can come up in the future, right? That's it. These are the two things. Ante ఇంతకు మించి ఏం అవసరం లేదు స్క్రిప్ట్ రాయడానికి. Rest of the things we learn in the room. Rest of the things we learn the stuff. All right, okay. Now let us assume that I have to create 100 files. I have to create 100 files, right? So what is the minimum thing which you should know while writing script? how do I create one file first? How do I create one file? So for creating in one file, okay, you would have something like get help. Okay. Oh man, I'll speak about these commands, but you'll have something called as new item. Okay, this you can Google it. How to create a file in PowerShell? He will tell you use new item. Okay. Now the problem is I can create a file, new file. Let us assume that I can create a file. Let me go to some other directory, cd dot or cd c dollar. Oh man. Fine. I get into directory called as temp. I would say new item test.txt. He's asking me something. I don't know what this is. It says I don't know what it is. So how do I resolve this? Yalaga. Get help. Just now we have seen this. Item hyphen. Since it will go more than that. Are you saying? New item. You have to tell something like path. You have to tell the file. Item type is file. And if you want to put it with some value, you can give that value. Is it making sense? So now can I create file? Right? Is it a difficult to find stuff? No. So I've just copied and pasted the same thing. Don't worry about it. So, but basically, I got a file called as testfile.txt. Let us see this. Start dot will take me to the folder view. What was the file's name? Testfile1.txt, and then I got some text. But the problem is I have to create 100. So one thing which I can do is I can copy this line 100 times. Fine, it will create. There is nothing wrong with that. Or I can go with some sort of a pattern which will basically reiterate, which will basically iterate the same code or the same line 100 times. Is that a better way, or whatever it is? So for example, what is the stuff which I have copied? This is a script. One way to generate 100 files is copy 100 times and change the file name every time. Test file 1, test file 2, test file 3, and all of that. Or write one line and repeat that 100 times. What do you think is a better way? That makes your script better. ఎలా చేద్దాం తర్వాత? How do you do that? Let us think about it later. But whether I copy the same thing again and again, or do I iterate the same line multiple times? And we all agree that iterating the same line multiple times is a better way. That is effective scripting. Whenever you are writing scripting, always remember, if you are copying and pasting some stuff from your own script into your own script, you are doing a big mistake. మీ స్క్రిప్ట్ రాసే whatever script which you are writing, if you are repeating yourself a lot, that means that you are not writing a good script. So we should be reusing a lot. We should be reusing a lot. For example, if I have done this work once, tomorrow in the sum script, if I had to do the same activity again with a different file name, I would probably go and reuse this script rather than really rewriting again. So one important thing is we should not be repeating ourselves, right? So this is a very popular principle in the programming world. We call it as dry principle. Don't repeat yourself. Okay. Reuse over redundant. Rather than copying and pasting your script, try to reuse it. All right. So these are the principles which we will get into. Right. Fine. Now, one last And wonderful thing which we want to start is we want to start some kind of a scripting, and for that we will come to know about variables and all of that which developers generally use, right? So any developers in the room who basically code? I know some of them, all right? Some of you are developers already. For you, tomorrow's class might not be like, what do you say, మనకు తెలిసినే మాట్లాడుతున్నాడు కదా. It would be something which you already know, but for the others we have to know those basics for us to write the effective scripting. So in system or in a programming world, okay, whenever, or let us not forget worry about programming, a lot of administrators in the room, right? When I start the system, okay, it takes lot of time to basically see my home screen, right? Why does it take that much time? Pardon me? సిస్టమ్ ఆలోచిస్తూ ఉంటుందా? లేదంటే సిస్టమ్కి మీరు నచ్చలేదా ఈడు నన్ను స్టార్ట్ చేయటం ఏంటి అని? Why does it take time for the laptop or whatever is smart to be started? It takes some time, right? What is it? Pardon me? I don't have any services on my system. I have created an operating system in such a way that I don't have any services. Then will it start immediately? Okay. To load all the services, I don't agree with that answer. To load the profile, what is user profile? Your answer is, I'm not saying it is wrong. The only point is your answer expects some intelligence to understand. So let us assume I'm a farmer. I don't know anything about computing. Okay, I'm illiterate, and now you have to tell me why laptop is taking more time. Because for me, my Onida TV was better. Because when I switch it on, I used to get sound. What's the TV panjas? Right, it is working. But now I have taken a Samsung TV worth 1.5 lakh, and it takes time. It takes time, and then suddenly it loads. I want to understand it. I am a farmer. I am not a literate person. Tell me how you explain it to me. Yes. Okay. Hmm. I am a farmer, sir. I am a farmer. I want the most easiest explanation to the illiterate person possible. To load booting files and kernel, yeah, looking good, but I am a farmer. I am an illiterate person. I don't know what is booting file, kernel, nothing. Tell me how you explain that to me. If I had to explain to a illiterate person, I would have told, in your TV, there are two memories. దానికి రెండు మెమరీస్ ఉన్నాయి, or two kinds of storages, brain, whatever it is, right? So one brain can just store, other brain works very faster, but it has a very important property. It is like Gajni, it forgets very fast. The moment you switch off the power, it forgets everything. It forgets everything. Now when you switch on the TV or a laptop, it is trying to recollect its memories. That would have been my answer. Now if I add some technicality to it, any system which you are working on will have two kinds of memories. One is primary, the other one is secondary. Primary is used for computing, very good, very fast, right? But the problem is that is not a persisted memory. The moment you stop voltage supply to it, everything in RAM will disappear. So where will your operating system be stored? On the hard disk. So whenever you are starting, Don't you need Windows or Linux? Yes. So what is happening? Your Windows is loading from your, is that not the first thing? And then comes profile, then comes all of the stuff, services and all of that, right? So this is a very important property while we are scripting. When you are scripting, we need to understand whatever stuff which I am creating or whatever the intermediary stuff which I am creating, is it required to be stored or not? If the answer is yes, I'll go to the hard disk. If the answer is no, I'll straight to the RAM, right? And here I have basically, I'll tell you this. This is a variable, and whenever you create any kind of variables in the script, you are working with RAM. You are working with RAM, right? Sometimes you might need to have that value after executing the script also. Then you would go to the hard disk. So whenever you are writing, that is the first important thing. Where, what is the memory which I need to use it, and do I need that value again in the future, right? Then comes two kinds of programming. One is to the RAM, the other one is to the hard disk. To the RAM is the most easiest stuff because you need not do anything. Whenever you create any variable, it is created in the RAM. RAM కోసం మనం స్పెషల్ గా ఏం చేయం. But if it is onto hard disk, you have to follow something special about it. You have to tell what is the file format. Is it a text file? Is it a binary file? Is it a JSON file? How the data is organized? You have to tell all of that. But if it is in the RAM, you have to just use variables, like how he is using something called a sum of squares over there. So we will continue this interesting discussion tomorrow, and then I want you to write effective scripts rather than just surviving with your scripting. So that's why I'm speaking about all of this. నాకు ఇవన్నీ చెప్పాల్సిన అవసరం కూడా లేదు. I can start with how the traditional shell script starts. Okay, we will have a command called as ls. Ls will list all the directories in the file system. I don't like that approach somehow, because that you can get by basically saying PowerShell cheat sheet. Go to the Google, you will get all the list of important commands. Similarly for Linux, you can go to the cheat sheet and you will find all the stuff. Let us not do that command based stuff. Let us try to think, and let us try to basically write an effective script rather than just surviving for a script, right? Interesting? Yes. Okay, so after this PowerShell, whatever is done, you can apply the same principles. Yeah, we might not have debugging, that's a different story, while learning shell scripting also. While learning shell scripting also, there are some subtle differences which you need to understand, but any scripting you can follow whatever I'm trying to teach for the next 2 or 3 days. Please follow that effectively. It would help you to learn any scripting, right? Fine. So tomorrow let us understand some of the what do you say, some of the essential entities while you write script. Okay, what are the different commands that are present, how do you use them, and all of that. Okay, so how do you search them, and let us take some use case and build around that use case. Okay, and I don't mind if even if you bring your system, still we finish PowerShell and PowerShell DSC, you can do it in the classroom along with me. I don't have a problem with that, right? Good. So let me stop it at that. Wednesday, right? I have to stop at 8:15, so I'm stopping it at right now. So we'll meet tomorrow to continue this discussion. Fine. What are the similarities between shell scripting and PowerShell scripting? There are many. Purpose why you do is the same. Script asala enduku rastamo same, right? But there are differences are in terms of some of the capabilities. Tomorrow I'll start defining something called as an object. So that is the primary difference between shell and PowerShell, right? Capability differences, that's what I would call. Yeah. Why Windows not have swap partition? They might not have thought about it. Yes, yeah, there are many things which Windows has not thought about. So for example, they have brought in that uh, what do you say, things of Linux quite lately into Windows best practices. It is a software. It is just like how your developers develop in your company. We'll have hell lot of bugs. Yeah. So some things might not have been designed, right? Yeah. Virtual memory is like swap, kind of. Paging is what we actually call in the Windows world, right? Yes. Okay. Okay then. Getting error as Choco is not recognized as a commandlet. For that you have to install it, sir. Choco will not be realized as a commandlet until unless you don't install it. Please install it. After that, close your terminal, restart your terminal, and then see Choco would be working. Yeah. Please correct me if I am wrong. Docker is a container, right? Not comes under config. Yes, Docker is a container management technology. No, it doesn't come under configuration management. Yes. Yeah. Okay then. So let us meet tomorrow and continue our discussion on PowerShell. Right. Thanks. Without configuration management, you will get less calls. Yeah. Okay.